Okay, today we're going to look at the Pythagorean theorem. Move at your own pace with your headphones and the laptop, and please come and ask me questions in the back with the group that I'm working with if you have any questions. Okay, here we go. Geometry is the unit we've been working on. And it basically means to measure, and therefore geometry is literally the measurement of the earth. In this unit, we'll be examining the Pythagorean theorem. So your next assessment for this class is going to be on the Pythagorean theorem. With the Pythagorean theorem, we'll find our goal is to use the Pythagorean theorem to prove that triangles are right triangles. Also, we will use the Pythagorean theorem to find the missing lengths of sides of right triangles. Okay, please follow along as I read this to you. A right triangle is a triangle that has one right angle. In a right triangle, the side opposite the right angle is called the hypotenuse. So here's the sign for the right triangle, and this is your hypotenuse. You know this because your right angle points to the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is also always the longest side. The other two shorter sides are called the legs, and the Pythagorean theorem states that for any right triangle, the square of the length of the hypotenuse is equal to the sums of the squares of the lengths of the legs. So you might have heard this formula before, or equation, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where a and b are the legs, the lengths of the legs of the triangle, and c is the length of the hypotenuse. This example shows how we use sides of the square to show the Pythagorean theorem. We can use the Pythagorean theorem to determine if a triangle is a right triangle. For example, is the following a right triangle? Well, what you would do is you would substitute these lengths in for A, B, and C. Then we would plug it into the formula to get 3 squared plus 4 squared. Does it equal 6 squared? 9 plus 16. 25 does not equal 36. Therefore, this is not a right triangle. Next example, is the following a right triangle? 8, 6, these guys are your legs, and 10 is the hypotenuse. You plug it into your equation here. 6 squared plus 8 squared, does it equal 10 squared? It does. So therefore, this triangle is a right triangle. Okay, now on to the math. What we're going to do for numbers 1 through 8 is we're going to try and prove which ones are right triangles and which ones are not. We're going to use the Pythagorean theorem to prove which ones are and which ones are not. Now, what you have to remember is that it doesn't matter which one of your shorter legs goes in for A or B here. What matters is that the longest side has got to go in for C. All right, so my first one's going to be 9 squared. You need to be writing down everything that I'm writing down. Plus 12 squared equals 15 squared. 81 plus 144 should equal 225. 225 does equal 225, so my answer is yes. Okay. What I'm going to do now is walk you through numbers 2 and 3, and then I'm going to let you do 4 through 8 by yourself, and then I'm going to allow you to check your work. Number 2, 7 squared plus 9 squared equals 10 squared. 7 squared is 49 plus 81. Does it equal 100? 130 does not equal 100. So my answer for number 2 is no. That is not a right triangle. Last one I'm going to work out with you is number 3. Please make sure you're copying all of this down. What just happened? All right. Number 3, 5 squared plus 12 squared. Does it equal 13 squared? 25 plus 144. Does it equal 13 squared, which equals 169? I'm going to add 144 plus 25. Whoops. 169 equals 169. So guess what? Yes, that is a right triangle. What I want you to do now is pause the video, and I want you to do numbers 4 through 8 by yourself. When you are finished, turn back on the video, press play, and check your work. If you did not get any right, you may turn to your peer buddy, which is a person that sits right next to you, and you guys may discuss the ones that you have questions about. If you still have questions about some, please come see me in the back as I'm working with a group in the back. Okay, this time please check your work. Make sure you have shown your work so you can get full credit. And please make sure that you understand what you missed. You can please turn to a peer buddy and talk about what it is that you missed. And if you still can't figure out where you went wrong, please come to me in the back table and ask me. When you are done looking over this and checking your work, we're going to move on to lesson 25. Now we're going to look at using the Pythagorean theorem to find the missing length of a side of a right triangle. If you know a triangle is a right triangle and you know two sides, you can find the length of the missing side using the Pythagorean theorem. We write the Pythagorean theorem first. Then you plug in the sides, solve, simplify, solve for b, and you get the value of b to be 16. Now remember, regardless of what the letter is for the variable, use the length of the hypotenuse for c and the length of the legs of the triangles for A and B. Let's go ahead and look at this next real-world example very quickly. Omar drove a remote-controlled boat across a creek that has a width of 9 feet. He stuck a flag in the creek bed to mark the starting point. When the boat got to the other side, the boat didn't cross the creek directly because the current carried the boat downriver. He wants to determine how far down the creek the boat ended up. If the boat actually traveled 15 feet, how far down the river did the boat end up? The width of the creek represents one leg of the right triangle. The distance the boat traveled represents the hypotenuse of the right triangle. The distance the boat ended up down the creek represents the other leg of the right triangle. To find this distance, substitute the known values into the Pythagorean theorem. After solving and simplifying, we see that Omar's remote-controlled boat ended up approximately 12 feet down the creek. Okay, now we're going to move on to doing the math. I'm going to work out number 1 for you. I'm going to work out number 4. And then I'm going to ask you to do 2, 3, and 5 by yourself. So at this point, I will need you to write down all the notes that I take and use my notes to guide you through 2, 3, and 5. Our goal is to find the value of x for 1 through 3. To do that again, we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem because this is a right triangle. My legs are 4 squared plus 3 squared equals x squared. Now, you will need your calculator because you will have to use the square root button. 4 squared is 16 plus 9 equals x squared. When you come to this step is a little different because we have to take the square root of, sorry, I did that a little too quickly. We need to take the square root of both sides to solve for x. When you take the square root, you're getting rid of the square sign. All right? So on your calculator, remember how to take the square root, practice, and the square root of 25 equals 5. So for number 2, the answer will be 5. All right, now I'm going to jump down to number 4. And I always draw pictures in math as much as I possibly can, especially when I'm working with the Pythagorean theorem. The question asks, what is the length of the hypotenuse of a right triangle that has one leg with the length of 9 inches and the other leg with a length of 12 inches? So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to draw my right triangle. The question is asking what is the length of the hypotenuse, so this is what I'm going to label my variable. Your variable always stands for what the question is asking you to solve. And then it says one leg is 9 inches and the other leg is 12 inches. Now I'm going to go ahead and solve for x. I'm going to use the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. 9 squared plus 12 squared equals c squared. 81 plus 144 equals c squared. Now again, you've got to use your calculator. 144 plus 81 is 225 equals c squared. Now, on your calculator, and well, what you're doing first is we're going to take the square root of both sides. So you're going to press second x squared on your calculator, which is the blue radical sign. Punch in 225 inside the radical sign, press enter, and you should get c equals 15. So the length of this side, oops, is 15 inches. So what I want you to do is to go ahead and work through the rest of the problems on this page, pause the video, and try to work through these with your buddy if you need to. Then once you press play, I will have the answers and you will be able to check your answers. Okay, number 2, you should have gotten 10. Number 3, your answer should be 12. In number 5, you should have gotten letter C. Please turn to your peer buddy in C and discuss any problems that you got wrong. If you still do not understand what you did wrong, please come see me in the back with the group that I'm working with in the back. Okay, now to the real world problems that we need to work through. Number 6. A lighthouse that is 120 feet tall casts a 160-foot long shadow on the surface of the water. What is the distance from the top of the lighthouse to the end of the shadow? Okay, so we know that the lighthouse is 120 feet tall. And then we also know that there's a 160-foot long shadow cast on the surface of the water. So you have to decide to yourself, is that the hypotenuse or is that the other leg? Well, if you look at the picture, the length of the shadow is on the water, so 160 would go here. That is your shadow. And then what we're solving for here is the hypotenuse. So we're going to write our formula. And then we're going to plug in 160 squared plus 120 squared equals c squared. Now, on your calculator, go ahead and find 160 squared, and you will get 25,600 plus 120 squared is 14,400. Then we add the two, 25,600 plus 14,400 to get 40,000 equals c squared. Now I need to take the square root of both sides, so I'm going to press second x squared, which gives me the radical sign, and plug it in under the radical sign. Press enter, and you should get c equals 200 feet. X equals 200 feet. Now, at this point, what I would really like for you guys to do is work through 6 through 9 by yourself or with a buddy. Pause the video and work through these. Now, when you're working through these, you have to label and circle and annotate the word problem. When you're finished, press play on the video to check your answers. Again, compare your answers with your peer buddy. Please talk amongst your peer buddy to see if your answer is correct or see what you got wrong. If you're having problems, please come see me with the group that I'm working with in the back. Okay, so for number 7, you should have gotten 5 feet. Okay. Number 8, you should have gotten 8 feet. Number 9, There are a number of possible answers, but anything close to 4 feet would give you the correct answer. Okay, what we're going to do for the rest of the class period is you have these practice problems to do. I would like for you to work through 1 through 13. Now, what you do not finish is for homework. I'm going to take this homework for a grade, and these are the things that I'm going to be grading you on. I need to see all your work shown on every single problem, okay? Whatever you do not finish is for homework. So I would go ahead and press pause and work through these. When you're finished, press play and check your work with my answers. Now, if you come into school tomorrow and all you have are answers for 1 through 13, you will get a 0. I need to see all your work shown. For example, every problem should look like this. Number 1. Find the missing measure of each right triangle round to the nearest tenth if necessary. B squared plus 7 squared equals 20 squared. So now I'm going to simplify. B squared plus 49 equals 400. Minus 49, b squared equals 351. At this point, you've got to take the square root of both sides. The square root of b squared is b. The square root of 351 is 18.7 meters. You round to the nearest tenth if necessary. So number 1 is 18.7 meters. Every single one of these problems should look like how I wrote for number 1 in your notebook, and that will give you 100% on a quiz grade 4 span. You may work together on these. Okay, guys, number 2, you should have gotten 7 1/10 inches. Number 3, you should have gotten 8. Oh, phooey. Number 3, you should have gotten 8.4 feet. Number 4, you should have gotten 32.8 centimeters. Number 5, 37 9/10 inches. Number 6, 1.3 yards. Number 7, 9.5 meters. Number 8, 15.5 meters. Number 9, no. Number 10, yes. Number 11, yes. Number 12, you should have gotten 37 7. Oh, phooey. Number 12, you should have gotten 37.6 meters. Number 13, 30.8 feet.